when you go to someone in conflict, the first thing you have to do is affirm the relationship.
If we become sacred spaces, if we do become those vaults that people can bring their stuff to, then we don't have to have a conversation of how transparent do we need to be. Because in this sacred space, it's all safe and all here. So conflict can happen. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to all move forward.
Welcome to the My BLVD Podcast, Season 5 here in 2025.
Yep, you're Dhati Lewis.
I'm Dhati Lewis.
And what's your role?
I'm the president
I love
of My
it.
BLVD.
I love it. You got comfortable with that now. Season 5, you're comfortable with it.
Season 5, I'm ready.
Yes, I like
ready.
it.
And
I
who
like
are you?
it. I'm Missy Branch, and I am the CEO of My BLVD. And I'm excited to be here. I love doing this.
I love doing it as well. I mean, because, last season, when our first episode together in season 4, we talked about, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why of urban missionaries. And so we was just like, all right, let's get out of kind of the formal definitions and all that.
Yes.
And let's get down on the street level and talk about some of the issues. And so in this first kind of batch, we talked about, let's deal with some leadership issues, because that's where it feels like many of us are, like we're dealing with organizational change. We addressed that in episode 1. And now today we're going to talk about conflict management, conflict resolution, just dealing with conflict, right? So I just want to just kind of start off with like conflict. You hear that word and you just kind of like, I don't want to do it. Like I'm a conflict avoidant, all the different things. But is conflict a bad thing?
Conflict is not always bad. Actually, I believe conflicts can give you a good sense of where you are in a relationship. Because if you can overcome it, if you can have good conversation because of it, if you can understand each other's communication, then look, we've proven something. We can get through it. I think it's when we realize that we really may not have the relationship we thought we had, that conflict can be negative.
Yeah, because it seems like because of our avoidance of conflict, we end up walking on eggshells. We end up
then we're not being
telling
honest.
our truth and not being honest with one another. All of those things, and so it's just like we try to avoid conflict. But if we were just to kind of think about conflict is just simply where there's two people or two things that are not in complete alignment. There's some form of conflict, and I think that one is being human, right? And oftentimes tell leaders, it's like, listen, here's the thing that you got to understand. It's not about whether people are going to have disagreement with you. It's when people have disagreement with you. Because by the very essence of disagreement or conflict with you is because you are not them. And if they were in your position, they would do it differently.
Right.
Right? And so that is the very essence of conflict. So it's like when we are trying to avoid it at all costs, we end up doing the thing and just not faithful.
Right. And just not in the best possible way. We could have just had the combo.
Yeah, we could just have the combo, right?
And I understand some people you can't have conversations with. I get it. But there's got to be a way to just simply avoidance it's just not the answer.
Yeah, it's not the answer. So basically, when we think about conflict, we talk about it, we recognize it, we understand it in everything. I don't think there's a individual that would say that they grew up in a home without any conflict. I don't think there's any individual who's been married for more than a day that it would say that I've never had any conflict in my marriage. Because if you got through the premarital, and if you got through your, the wedding, the honeymoon, all of those things, even preparing, the planning without conflict.
Well, y'all are special anyway.
You are
They
special.
deserve each other.
You deserve it.
Yes, and they should be teaching the classes.
But we accept conflict in every other situation, every other scenario. Nobody wants it. Nobody seeks after it. But when it comes to organizational leadership, when it comes to leading your ministry, leading this label, leading, managing employees, whatever it is, even as a Christian, we think it's so ungodly to have conflict. Right. And to have that type of conflict in the church is saying something about our leadership. It's saying something. So what it ends up producing, it's either a codependency when I'm constantly looking into your face and I'm going to make sure I'm going to be whatever I need to be. so that I don't have
conflict with
conflict,
you,
and that
right.
creates performative, or it creates this complete independence where I'm just like, I don't care how you feel about what I'm saying because we're doing this anyway,
Right.
right? And both of them are
Yes.
avoidant of conflict,
Ugh.
right? And I think, but conflict is a real thing that we got to address, and we got to manage the
Yes, I
tension through
guess
it.
there was a season in my life where there were 4 teenagers that I was parenting. I feel like that's the definition of conflict.
That is the definition. Were they teenagers at the same time?
Yes, all 4 of them.
You see, because here's the thing for me. I have a junior in high school, a senior in high school, a freshman in college, a sophomore in college, a senior in college, and a grad student in
Yep.
college. There's a possibility in 2 years, if one of my daughters stays in school, that I would have 6 kids in college at the same time. That's conflict. I'm having conflict mentally because I'm
You're
like,
having internal
conflict.
Yes, this is causing
right?
internal conflict.
So,
Yes.
so to try to avoid conflict,
Yes.
it seems unwise.
Yes.
It seems not possible.
You got to deal with this thing.
We got to deal with this
Yes,
thing,
yes.
right? And so, what if we could take that same posture, and when we think about leading one individual, 2 individuals, 20 individuals, 200, 300, 400, whatever it is that we have been responsible for leading, let's embrace and understand that we will have conflict,
Yeah.
right? And so the question is, what are healthy ways to deal with
Yes.
conflict? All right, so let's just talk about conflict. Let's talk about you as a leader, right, in conflict. How open or transparent do leaders need to be during conflict?
Well, I think there's a difference between open and authentic.
Okay.
I don't think that they have to be the same thing. And I don't think transparent and messy are the same thing. I think we can overshare. We can be so transparent that there's nothing not to see. And sometimes that's good. Other times I think we just want everybody to see all the stuff. And I think open is not the same as transparent, because transparent is allowing me to really see what's on the other side, and open means I'm allowing you to see what I have not had hidden. And I just think that there's just, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I will say I'm speaking from experience of my own hurt in conflict in orgs and churches and things like that. But what I do know is that there is no magic number. Like we should be 50% transparent or 30% open or 60% authentic when it comes to how to handle. I think it's case by case. I think it depends on the impact that it's going to have on the community. I think it's going to be the impact of the people in the conflict. But I do think sometimes we forget to measure this one, what do you call it? One stat. And I think, how does this conflict, when handled well, show the community the way the gospel deals with impact, and the ripple effect of handling this well has in this community if we do it well and the Lord is glorified and people are matured. Sometimes I think we forget that there's just really that opportunity to take this conflict and make it a teachable moment, not just for ourselves, because we both need that, or whoever's in the conflict, but those we lead and those who are being impacted by it.
Yeah, I think I love that. I love, and I love how you're talking about it as it relates to how it impacts the community and those things. Because as you were talking, I was thinking about, yeah, but okay, what about how it impacts the mission, right? And we think about,
Yes.
because oftentimes as leaders, we are leading because we are trying to accomplish a mission.
A mission, yes.
Or accomplish a goal, or trying to go somewhere and think. And sometimes our lack of dealing with conflict healthily or in a healthy way can seriously either propel the mission or kind of detract from
stall the mission too.
stall
Yeah.
the mission as a whole. And the chapter and verse that I think about is that there was conflict that was taking place in Acts chapter 6. There was some Hebraic Jews overlooking the Hellenistic Jews,
Yes.
right? The widows, right? And so for the first time in all of the book of Acts, they said, we need to gather the entire church, right? So this is a big conflict. This is a major issue. We're thinking about systemic prejudice that's taking place in the early church. And so they was just like, hey, this is conflict. And there's people who are complaining, I'm being intentionally overlooked. I'm being overlooked because of my culture background, because of where I'm from, because of things. And it seems like it's not just me, it's other people who have
Right.
similar issues like
as
me, right?
Yes.
And so this is systemic. This is an issue. And so the apostles hear about this conflict and they shut things down and says, let's gather everybody together and let's address this conflict. And this is where oftentimes I think we miss it often because we talk about this is where we get our first deacons and we just make that passage in Acts chapter 6 about the first place where deacons are introduced. And I was just like, did you miss the whole conflict that was taking place?
Right.
But what I love about the verse is that they dealt with it. They said, listen, this is an important issue because we wouldn't have gathered everybody if it wasn't important. However, God has called us, we got to focus on the ministry of the word, right? The ministry of prayer. That's where our focus needs to be. So congregation, you have to appoint people that you think that you trust to deal with this conflict that we are having, so that so everyone can feel like they have a place where they belong and matter. And I think that that's important. And so that we can continue on the mission. So in there, what I love about this is beautiful that we stayed focused on the mission. They didn't totally stop. There was like, as apostles and as leaders, we are supposed to be on this mission, but we also need to raise up some leaders to address the issues on there. And here's the big thing. And this is the big point that I want to make is that in Acts chapter 6 and 7, it says, the Lord added to their number. But it was like, what's interesting is that it was the priest and the people that were added. And as I thought of thinking about that, and you think it was the priests who were the primary ones who dealt with conflict. And I think the way that the apostles addressed, they didn't act like the conflict wasn't there.
Right.
But they ran to it. They didn't get off of mission. They said, we got to stay focused. But they addressed it, appoint leaders, appoint deacons, and the Lord added to their number. So you see the mission continue. You didn't have to stop the mission. You didn't have to avoid the mission. But the morality and the ethics was addressed.
Well, yes. And when I read that same that same story, that narrative, for me, I see how there's this deviation in Acts that feels like it's a offshoot. But Philip was one of those 7, right?
Yeah.
So Philip is an evangelist. And you fast forward to Acts maybe 9. I could be wrong. So this is not me trying to be a scholar. This is me just. But then you meet Tabitha. Tabitha is believed to be a part of the community that became believers because of Philip. But Philip was one of the people who was helping with the issues with the widows.
Yep.
But then Tabitha goes on to be known for her work with the widows. And for me, I'm thinking, look at the ripple effect of these men being on mission. These men first were discipled by Jesus, and then they create this community. The community has issues. They pick these wise people to run it. These wise people are still spreading the gospel, and then you still watch the ripple effect of handling conflict well and how it can be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Become a community impact. But what I don't see in there is a clear answer of how much do we tell the people? How much do we not tell the people? How much, you know what I'm saying? What should we shield for them? Do they know it was these 3 that told on us, or do they think it's just one person said something? Did we have a meeting in the back before we met with them? And I think those are the parts that are more difficult when it comes to how do we deal with the conflict.
Yeah. I agree, because basically Barna came out with a study that, it is ultimately said 40% of pastors. So let's get with the church for a minute. They said 40% of pastors say conflict is probably the most common reason why they're considering leaving the ministry.
Oh, yes.
Right. So, and I think it's because of those nuanced details that we have, because, as someone who has been through lots of conflict, lots of transition, lots of things here at Blueprint, the question always becomes, when you're dealing with not with just your own issues, but you're dealing with the other people's issues and other people, how much do we share the congregation? How much do we not share? And then again, utilizing Acts chapter 6 it seemed like they
The
brought it
people
all
knew what was going
before.
on, right?
The people knew what was going on. However, it's kind of like, but we were like, I don't know if I want my business in the streets like that. Now, especially if it's not just about you. So if we have two
Yes.
conflicting
Competing,
people,
yes.
with competing
Stories and
stories,
narratives, yep.
and then you're coming in and you're trying to mediate, and then, on one end, you feel like, if you get super vague and says, hey, there's some conflict, so we're asking them both to sit down, then they're just like, that was super vague. That's not helpful. And then all that does is pique people's
Yes.
curiosity.
And also feel like, so should I trust y'all? Because
Yeah.
you can't even tell us what's going on, right? Yes.
But then if you start to say, well, see, so-and-so did this, and and she was wrong, she knew she was wrong, but then, but X, Y, if you start going into details of the stories, it's like, whoa, that's way too much information. Why are we doing it? And so it's just like, what is the healthy tension? I'm not even gonna say balance. What is the healthy tension as leaders as we are trying to address conflict? Because it is ripping our ministries, it's ripping our churches.
Oh, yeah.
I'm seeing like, so many people are leaving,
Yes.
right, because of us
An inability.
and then our inability to deal with conflict in a
Yes.
healthy way.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not the conflict expert, so do not hear me saying I know. But what I am saying is that I've been in the center of it. I've been this conflict has happened and the decisions need to be made, and my life is the one that is involved in this. Um, much of this is church related, this particular thing that I'm thinking through. And I watched it be held, the conflict be dealt with in a way that was very motivated by things that were peripheral to the actual problem.
Okay.
And I think that that's where a lot of the drama comes in. Why am I telling this much? Because I want to see this person hurt. Why am I withholding these parts? Because I don't want people to know that. Rather than taking what is an abominable situation, this conflict, these people hurt, this situation, and saying, this is an opportunity for our church to operate as a community. We'll know how mature this church is and how we've led them in maturity by how we handle this situation and how they then handle it. And I think the same thing is true in organizations with CEOs, and I think the same is true in ministries where it could be parachurch. We'll know how we've been leading in maturity and if we've even acquired mature people by how we walk through this thing together. But I think the motivation behind what I am going to share and what I'm not going to share is the biggest drama. It's sometimes more dramatic than the conflict itself because conflict is going to happen. They don't agree on this. So we're going to talk to them. And then she said this and she said that. That happens. What we said to them is, you're sisters in Christ, you have to da-da-da. You're both brothers, you have to da-da-da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the real drama becomes with the motivation behind whether or not I don't want my leaders' information in the street. Or I want to see them hurt. I've been trying to get rid of them for a while. So now it's a great time to tell all their business. To me, I think that's where the biggest drama comes in.
Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, how do we deal with this conflict, right? And even what's the difference between being authentic and inappropriate? I mean, that's ultimately what I'm hearing, right? In what we're doing, because on one end, and I've heard it said, and I've stated it before, the level of your leadership is the level of exposure, in the sense of, if you are a high level leader, then we got to expose it on a high level. We can't put it on the side, but but it still has a significant impact. And what I've learned is people are never satisfied with the amount of information that you give them, or and it's like, and so what it happens is that it generates side conversations and sidebars, no matter how much. And as soon as you say, hey, you guys, don't talk about this at home. Don't talk about this.
Well, why would you even say it?
Yeah,
because that's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time.
Don't talk about this at home. Don't worry about it. I'm talking about it online.
I'm talking about it online.
Don't worry.
On the phone.
Yes.
I won't be home when I'm talking about it, but I'm going to talk
Don't
about
worry.
it. And so I guess I'm just saying, so like, what is some advice you would give to some leaders? Right? Like we're walking through something and they want to be authentic, but at the same time, they recognize that this impacts more than just them. This impacts people that they've been responsible for shepherding. And on one end, one person's like, I'm totally cool with you sharing what's going on. On the other end, someone's saying, no, actually,
I don't
I'm a
want my
private
business in the
person. I
streets.
don't want my
Yes.
business out there
Yes.
like that, right?
Yes.
And so, like as leaders, you're trying to navigate that, like, and ultimately knowing that this is going to this is going to have significant consequences on our organization.
Well, I think first of all, that's the thing we need to be aware of and recognize conflict. James says, "Why are why are there quarrels among you? Somebody is sinning. This is not happening because y'all are loving each other and loving Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So we know that there's something going on, and the impacts of sin is always multiplied. And I think you're never going to walk away from conflict, especially these leaders are conflicting, or this is having community-wide impact. You're never going to walk away from that and brush it under the rug and no one knows and that go well. It just does not go well. So now you have to say there will be collateral damage. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And how do we, of course, mitigate it? I'm not trying to burn the whole house down if the kitchen is the only thing that's going to burn. But I have to understand the kitchen is burning. So there's going to be damage. And I think when we're trying to make it look like nothing ever burned is when we are messing up. So I have watched people be in situations, leaders, bring in a person, a third party, who is not biased and been, it's sort of like when Nathan said, you know what, let me just ask you a question, David. There was a man and he had a sheep. You know what I'm saying? When you are able to help someone to view this not based on the hurt that you're in right now, but based on the generic principles, how would we work through it? Then I think that that's one way to solve conflict. And then that person can even help navigate how do we be wise with the damage that will be
Can I
shared
be honest
because it
with you
will
right
happen.
now? When you said that stirred an emotion in me.
Did it?
It did. It stirred an emotion. You know why? Because I was that guy. I was that pastor that got a third party coming in, investigating. Is the Hottie Mark Driscoll? Is those things? We brought in a company, had them do.
Okay, so company is different.
Well, no,
Yes,
we
but
brought in
yes.
an
Yes,
advisor,
yes,
a
yes.
mediator.
I mean, but it's a
a
shame you brought in
person.
a company.
We brought
Yes.
in, right? We brought in. So $30,000 later, or something like that. It was up $20,000 to $30,000 that we spent to bring in someone to investigate whether or not I was X, Y, and Z. They go through a 4 or 5 month process, interviewing people, talking to people, doing all the things. They come out and it says the Hottie's not perfect. He has flaws. However,
He's not this.
he's not what has been stated.
Mm-hmm.
It did nothing. It did nothing. Nobody who was against before was like, oh, that's all right. So I'm coming back now. The people who stayed was like, oh, they felt validated. And the impact was still the impact, of it. And again, I'm not saying this like as a war as me, but I've seen so many churches go through this song and dance.
Yes, but the impact is the impact.
Yeah, and the impact.
And I think that's what we're always trying to avoid. We're always trying to avoid what the impact will be. But what you just said is the impact is the impact. So since we're going to have it, we might as well do it head on. I think it's, we both have these monumental moments of what that impact looked like, but you can't undo that. So then you have to say, so now as a leader, instead of me trying to only focus on hedging the impact, why don't I now instead focus on what is the root of this conflict? What is the true root of this conflict? Not we're fighting over cotton balls, but really y'all been mad at each other for 6 months. No, what is the true root of this conflict? How can we, through the gospels, try to bring healing to this conflict? And then how do we not create a narrative, but now how do we go to the community and say, this is what this conflict was, this is where we are, we need you to pray, or look what the Lord has done.
Well, how much of it is when we know some of it is this is just cultural differences, this is just generational differences. I mean, just to give an example, for me one day, and I'm not the proudest of this moment, but one day I go home, right, and there's people in my house, people, my daughters, siblings, friends, whatever, and I went in and I said, hey, welcome, what's up, y'all? And there was a couple people who just didn't say what's up back. They were in my house and they didn't say
Anything to you.
anything back.
Uh-huh.
But that wasn't the first time. It happened again earlier.
Uh-huh.
Right? It happened.
It had happened before.
They had it before, and I remember that I logged that. I was just like, like you walked in, you didn't say. So I basically was like, hey, when I walk into my house, I want you to respect me, and I'm just like with that energy, and I say, so obviously we in conflict now.
Now there's conflict.
Right? Now
they didn't even know there was conflict, but now there's conflict.
And we went to conflict. So there was conflict, right? We were able to walk through it. We were able to talk and come back and resolve. But what it ultimately came down to, what the person didn't have a home where you needed to acknowledge family, adults, people coming to the house. Like that wasn't a thing in their house.
Right.
But in our house, like we teach our kids, everywhere you go, you respect the people,
particularly
the authority, the host. Right. You're in somebody else's home, all those things. But what I found out, it was, cultural, right? But it created conflict, and so.
Well, I will argue you probably should have said something to them the first time you were offended.
I know. I'm 100%.
And that would have probably helped to mitigate some of that conflict the second time. Yes. So it was the colliding of both the culture and the not nipping it in the bud, which I do think adds to the conflict. Yes. Because when they didn't respond the second time, you were like, I got to nip. Now I nip it in the bud. But there was a first time. Right. Yes. Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. How do you, as a pastor, leader, have those things be built up? Because it's just going to happen. You hear somebody says something disrespectful in a meeting, or someone says something about an employee that is a different story. And then when you have to deal with them, not bring that into the conflict or create conflict in the moment that you're in.
Yeah, well, I mean, the number one thing that I try to do is I'm always trying to be present with myself, is that I feel like I'm getting angry. Mm-hmm. And anger just is it's like an indicator light for me that says something matters. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing that I'm always trying to do is like, what matters? What matters to me at this point in this time? Because I'm feeling myself. And so now I can get to the root of it. You talk about the root. And then I can explore, okay, but why does this matter? Mm-hmm. Where am I going? Right? I feel disrespected. I remember the last time I felt disrespected. Whatever it is that I'm going. And then I say, what do I need? And so part of me is just like, or I need a sense of you hearing me, or I need
acknowledgement.
I need acknowledgement.
Right.
I need you to hear me before whatever it is. And I think that is something for me that helps me to navigate, because I feel like, and oftentimes I have a short, I'm not a long fuse. Like, hey, I'm not gonna
just get angry.
Just get angry. Right. I'm gonna give rope, and all that. But then when it pops up, I gotta say something, because it's gonna impact our ability to fellowship, right? And so this is something that I constantly talk about. It was like, we gotta run to the tension, but we have to run with the heart of reconciliation.
Right? Now that's the hard part, because I think people are okay with we're living in conflict. Yeah, we don't. You do you. Yes, and I'm gonna do me, and we're in conflict, and then we're gonna keep going. And I don't know. As believers, do you feel like we can just do that?
As believers, can we do that? I mean,
people
presence
do it.
And the power of the Holy Spirit. I would say no. As believers, I believe we need more Jerusalem councils, right? Because what was that? In Jerusalem, there was conflict. And so the apostles got together and they said, hey, do we need to be circumcised? Do we need to have, like, we have different vantage points. And it's like, let's wrestle together. I think the lack of our ability to have genuine conflict, where we have genuine disagreement in a controlled environment, is killing the body of Christ.
Yeah, it's actually killing our culture too.
It's killing us.
It's okay that we don't agree.
It's okay.
I can love you.
Right. Now we live in a society and a culture that says, if you don't agree with me, then you are against me. And I was just like, that is just not the case.
So think about it. So now we're in a culture that says, if you don't agree with me, then you're against me, but I'm a leader and I may not agree with some people in my community, my church, my org. What how do you think? What is the best way to articulate I don't agree with you, but I'm for you?
I think the way that the Bible talks about, like if you are a leader, if you are someone under authority, you appeal to leadership. You make an appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you demand, it doesn't mean you like you appeal,
Kind of
right?
like Paul did Philemon. I mean, like Paul did Philemon about Onesimus.
About Onesimus. He
Yes, right.
appealed, he didn't like he says, hey, listen, I could come to you with this apostolic kind of
Right,
thing, but no,
right.
I'm appealing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the same way Paul did he was like, listen, I know you don't have to be circumcised,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I got Timothy circumcised, but I'm not getting Titus circumcised. I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna I'm coming all the way so that I can appeal to the apostles, right? Who say they say they're an authority, even though they're not authority. Paul was like, listen, I'm gonna appeal, even though I know what I was. He says, I'm gonna appeal. And I think that idea of appealing to one another, I think is so critical in that sense of appealing instead of demanding, right? Is so important for us. And I think that the better we are able to doing
Yeah.
that, the better we are being able to having good, healthy conflict with one
Because you
another.
know why? Appealing says, I love you and I want you to hear what I'm saying, but demanding says, I need you to know I'm right.
Yeah. And to some degree, I lose power if I'm appealing to you.
Right.
And I don't want to lose power and give up power,
Wow.
in
Wow.
that. And, I would rather demand and I would rather continue to create that.
So do you know of a healthy framework for, I guess I'm asking you all these questions because you're the pastor and you know.
I got all, I told you I was
right.
the source of most conflict.
Right. But do you know of a framework? What is a healthy framework when you think of, I am going to walk into this, lead these people through conflict?
Yeah. What I would say, I read a book, and he talked about this idea of the tunnel of chaos.
Mm.
And it talks about when you're going into conflict, and I never forget the stages, and I'll go ahead and say that. The number one thing was when you go to someone in conflict, the first thing you have to do is affirm the relationship. The reason why I'm coming to you is because you're a brother, you're a sister, you're someone I love and I care about. And I could have hid this, I could have buried this, and I could have just acted like just ran a certain way. But I want to affirm that I have genuine love and concern for you in this situation and the mission of this organization, this church, this family. Number one. Number two, make observations, not accusations.
That's really
Hey,
good.
when you come, don't say things like, it was stupid.
Yeah.
You were dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That
was ignorant.
Like, that was ignorant.
Yes.
That was, that was selfish of
Yes.
you when you,
Yes.
right? Because that's automatically gonna put somebody on the defensive. But
Right.
instead, if you make observations, hey, when you said, hey, I don't know, I don't like what you're saying.
I'm not even
made
sure
me
what you meant by
feel-
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You just said like, I'm just making an observation of this actually happened. This is how that made me feel, right? The third thing is don't allow that thing to fester. So like you said earlier,
Yeah.
right? Hey, the first time, okay, I'm gonna sit on this. All right, the next time, now I'm just,
Yes.
because when you fester, what it ends up happening is the worst time to do is that in the midst of that emotion.
Yes.
Like you may give yourself some time to process it, but when you're ready, put a timer on that thing. Hey, in a day or in a, I'm gonna come back and I'm going to address, I'm gonna affirm the relationship, I'm gonna make observations, not accusations. And then the final thing is come as a part of the solution. Don't come with just saying, I'm just going to
Lay out
allow
what's-
you to
yeah.
deal with whatever. I'm just going to get stuff off my chest. But like what's
So
the
what do we
solution?
do about this? Right.
What can we do, right, in order to reconcile? And that's what we're talking about. We run to the tension, but we run with the heart of reconciliation. I think is super important, as not if we deal with conflict, but when we deal with conflict.
I think that is helpful both in like personal relationships and team leadership dynamics. Because I know from experience that the last thing is usually not the thing that happens. I needed to get this off my chest. And, someone said this to me, and I think there's truth to it. So many of us need our pain to have a public platform. And so I need to say to you, you hurt me, but I need to say it 50 times. I need to say it at the meeting. I need to say it on social media. I need 60 people to hear me tell this same story because it needs to be public. But then when you get to the, okay, you've said it, where do we move forward past it? And I think not ever being able to come with even the person who's observing, either it be the person who's hurt or the person who's hurt them, no one coming with, this is what it looks like to move forward, is where we get left with this. So, yeah, so now what?
So here's what we're saying, because we got to wrap it up. Conflict is a form of trauma to some degree. Small T trauma, big T trauma, because oftentimes when conflict happens, like
It's
you go,
because
it
of
takes you
something.
to a place.
Yes.
Trauma needs a home to take it to. You talk about a public platform.
Mm-hmm.
We are supposed to be sanctuaries as
Right.
leaders, as believers.
Yes.
Sanctuary is a place that I can bring me,
All of it,
all of me to.
and lay it.
So if we don't create environments and spaces where people can bring their conflict to, where they're not going to be judged, where they don't have to perform, where they can be real, what we will continue to have is what we're currently getting. People leaving, people divorcing, people splitting, people isolated. And I think when we talk about the church, we're supposed to be better, or we're supposed to be a space where we can actually like deal with conflict in real and healthy ways. And I think oftentimes there's so many times, like even as like before we take communion, the Bible says like first go deal with the conflict.
Right.
Before you offer up
Wow.
sacrifices, so that nothing is impeding our relationship with God. But we have just become okay with our conflict, our hurt, and our pain.
And sometimes the toxicity. You know, and I think it goes to the original point. If we become sacred spaces, if we do become those vaults that people can bring their stuff to, then we don't have to have a conversation of how transparent do we need to be. And how much should we tell and not tell? Because in this sacred space, it's all safe, and all here recognize that sacredness, and we create the space for people. So conflict can happen. We're in this sacred space. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to all move forward.
On that note, we got to end it because that's good. Thank you.
Amen.